Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to the Asia Solidarity Lab plenary panel. My name is Shibayan and I work with 350.org Asia as the senior digital organizer, and I'll be moderating this session. This session is called a Green New Deal for Asia, and this plenary session will discuss the political and the economic challenges to implement a Green New Deal in Asia and what a Green New Deal for Asia looks like. Well, let's look at the context of this whole Green New Deal movement and what it means for Asia. The Asia Pacific region produced 16.75 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions in 2020. This was more than the total combined emissions of all other regions that year. China alone accounted for 50% and 60% in Asia Pacific and 31% in global total. Although the main emission sources and the challenges differ between different countries in Asia, I feel like if you're looking for a Green New Deal in the Asian context, the solutions should have synergies and follow similar solutions model, while the political movements should also cooperate regionally and globally. Though the Green New Deal movement remains very global north centric, but in Asia, it's so slowly but steadily the momentum for Green New Deal is building up. We have seen in South Korea, one of the region's top polluters, announce an ambitious climate change policy, which the president has dubbed as the South Korean Green New Deal. In Bangladesh, Member of Parliament Sabir Hossain Chaudhry has called for a Green New Deal and the transition to renewable energy by 2050. In Singapore, a network of green activists are calling for a Green New Deal, a policy proposal for a post-COVID just transition to zero carbon economy. In Nepal, there are growing calls from activists for a green recovery and cancelling all permits for gas and oil drilling. In this session, I'm joined by activists, researchers, climate champions, working on climate change and advocacy from Singapore, Bangladesh, and Nepal. First up is Mr. Taylor Hakim. Taylor is an independent consultant who publishes reports and articles on sustainable cities and is based in Singapore. His recent work in the past few years on topics in Singapore includes carbon farming and climate change mitigation policies. He has worked with local grassroots climate action groups in Singapore, such as Foodscape Collective, 350 Singapore Climate Rally, and Green Lobang. His current work is with the Singapore Green New Deal project, which is a policy proposal for a post-COVID just transition to the zero carbon economy. Next is Jannatul Moa, who is a youth climate activist, a UN woman climate champion of 2021. Also, ActionAid Bangladesh awarded her climate champion in 2021 as well. She's from Satkhira, one of the most climate impacted districts in Bangladesh. Since 2020, Jannatul and members from her network has been organizing climate strikes every Friday, calling for a Green New Deal in Bangladesh. Next is Suhanur Rahman. Suhanur is the chief executive of a youth-led organization titled Bangladesh Model Youth Parliament. He's the country's key young climate advocate who coordinates the largest youth network, YouthNet for Climate Justice, and is a founding member of the global youth movement Fridays for Future, Bangladesh's country chapter. He's also one of the key movement leaders from the Green New Deal movement in Bangladesh. And last but not the least, Sagarika Bhatta. Sagarika is an environmental science and management postgraduate from Nepal. She is a climate justice advocate, researcher, and academic, tutor, environmental preservationist, and entrepreneur. She is also the chairperson and founder of Powership Nepal and We Care Nepal. Thank you, everyone, especially the speakers for joining in. I know that time is very important, so we will keep this discussion to 45 minutes, and we'll wrap up as soon as we can. And my first question is for you, Jannatul. As a woman on the front lines of climate impact in Bangladesh, what do you envision in a Bangladesh Green New Deal? And what are some of the women's rights issues that you want a Green New Deal to address?
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for calling me. Really, this is a platform where the youth can speak, and I think when youth can speak, they can change the world. And you know that I am working in the grassroots level and working with the young people. So this is my realization in working last 2 or 3 years, that there is two part. That on is people want to change, and on part is who will the change maker and who will change the structure. But when I see in the grassroots level that that when you talk about carbon emission, that people think, oh, if you change carbon emission, so we will lost our luxury life. But there is not, we face a lack of awareness that how can we turn our life in renewable energy and green new deal. Yeah, so people think that when you are in green life, so they will lost all of their life, like electricity, they will walking in their leg. So there the people is not totally aware. And the second thing is that in our country, that the people did not, nowadays they did not think that we need to change our structure. We are living in our life like the 200 years that we are living like that. And innovation, if I told about the new innovation, that we are not interested to innovate new things, like how can we will translate, or how can we will turn our life in green life. So I think this is real challenge, that lack of awareness. We need to aware people that why it is important, and why we turn our life in green, green life, and green world. So that we are working, that from 2020 we are working, and we did the climate strike. And that time we saw that the situation. And that last 2 year we faced so much difficult, that Amphan, and last years, about that. So first I believe that we will award the people who will want to change. If the mass people did not want to change, if you change the structure totally, this will be not work. So first one is award those people, and we will take all those people, and then we will change the structure. So I think this is our barrier, and we need to do this.
Okay, thanks, Jannatul, for your comments. Taylor, my next question is to you. In your research that I read on ResearchGate, not all of it, but I read that Singapore's commitment to the Paris Agreement falls short of the scientific targets to limit global warming to less than 1.5 C. So, as a Green New Deal advocate for Singapore, what are you aiming in terms of policy and in terms of ambition?
Thanks for inviting me on. It's great to to be able to get to meet you guys and to share, like you said, this platform. And I want to be able to give some credit also to some of the other groups that I've worked with in Singapore, namely SG Climate Rally. So a lot of my recommendations in my report are very similar to theirs as well. So on their website, you can find on their website our demands. And yeah, so um, it's quite straightforward. So the scientific targets are to reduce by 30% for globally, and or 50% rather for developing countries, and then zero by 2050. So that would be the minimum in terms of ambition, and that's not really what the Singapore government is currently committing. Um, so they haven't really landed exactly yet on firmly, kind of when they would reduce. So it's kind of like China, right? They're a little bit more on the China curve, which is 2060 or something. But there aren't really any firm targets. They're aiming to peak somewhere before 2030. That's about all they are committing to. So of course that's definitely less than adequate. So Climate Action Tracker has also evaluated Singapore's policies, and the same conclusion: they're quite weak, they're quite inadequate. So specifically where the real gaps are is to be able to do something about the largest source of emissions, which is the petrochemicals industry. And so that's Singapore is really the largest contributor. It's a pretty substantial in terms of emissions, and it's something that is not taken lightly, in political discourse. Um, so they do have a big presence, in terms of the amount of revenue that it brings in, and also, yeah, I mean, in terms of just the presence of these large multinationals in Singapore, in their relationships that they have within the community. So scaling that down, it will be no small effort. And so, of course, that would mean some policies that would be able to make that transition smooth. So one of the things that the climate rally and as well I put in my research is consideration to make sure that when that industry does transition into something new, that there'll be jobs for those kinds of workers. So that's what a Green New Deal, that's one of the main appeals of the Green New Deal, is to have job opportunities for these displaced workers. And that's, either in the new digital growth, um, yeah, or other kinds of industries that are growth industries. But some of the ways that the industry would be cleaned up and decarbonized may also be job creating as well too, like carbon capture and utilization. These would all be new job opportunities, as well as renewables, right? So these are all new jobs. So that's really where there's a bit lacking in the Singapore government policy, is there isn't that really the spirit of a Green New Deal is, the much larger role of the state in leading that effort and the job creation, and that's where one of the barriers are into sort of a paradigm shift to more of a state-led development model than the current way that the government typically operates, which puts businesses more in the driver's seat. So some specific policy areas would be to raise the carbon tax. That's something that has gotten more traction recently. Ravi Menon, the head of the Monetary Authority of Singapore, a rather prominent government member, has now started signaling the exact same policy recommendations that we've been making in our proposals, which is to raise it to the international standard of $75 a ton. And so that's right there at the top to help finance the Green New Deal. But that's not enough. There's also, like I said, consideration for transition assistance to marginalized communities, not only for job transition assistance, but also for any potential impact and outlays it may have on rising cost of living and electricity and stuff. So that's also a big part of the Green New Deal. Package is making sure that it's ultimately a good deal for people, and that that it's not hurting their pocket, in a sense, or having them have less job opportunities. It's about more job opportunities. And the other component, in addition to a carbon tax, is actually being in that role to actually stimulate and fund through green financing or whatever the renewables infrastructure in the region. because a lot of the opportunities would not necessarily be in Singapore's borders per se. It's just a city state, right? But maybe in the neighboring countries like Indonesia and Malaysia. So ramping up that investments in renewables, that's another component, is ramping that up, either working through the Asian Development Bank or green financing incentives with corporations, or just a wealth tax and funding it through public spending. But yeah, getting that infrastructure built, getting that conversion done, cleaning up Jurong Island, and having transition assistance and for just transition. So these are kind of key policy areas, and these are kind of the key points. A summary, I guess. There's more detail after that, but that's a summary. Hope that was a good
Okay.
summary.
Yeah, I think I agree that was a really good summary in terms of what the Singaporean, like in terms of what a Green New Deal for Singapore wants to achieve. And I think one of the points that you raised is really important, that Singapore being a very small state, like an island state, if I say, not exactly an island, that it can build infrastructure in the neighboring countries, like renewable energy infrastructure. And that's what, and which brings to me to the point that in Bangladesh, there are these renewable energy innovations that happening. And one of the companies is doing is that it's called peer-to-peer solar energy sharing. It's basically people who have solar plant, like solar power in their house. They can sell the excess energy to their neighbors and back to the government, back to the grid. And there's like solar for renewable energy. There's a lot of innovations happening, and it's still continuing. So my next question is to you, Sohanur, is that the first demand for a Green New Deal in Bangladesh came from the parliament, like from the Member of Parliament, Sabir Hossain Chowdhury. Now you're also calling for your youth network, and of course, along with 350, we're also calling for a Green New Deal in Bangladesh. But where do you see the movement in Bangladesh heading? And why do you think a Green New Deal for Bangladesh is very important, not only for the country, but also for the region?
Thank you, Shiva. So at first we should rethink that climate crisis is not only environmental issue, or not it's only the development issues. It is totally economical issues, and we also assessing the 1.5 degree or 2 degrees. It's not current time, it's the pre-industrial level. So industrialization is connected is the for the climate crisis. So capitalism, colonialism, and domination, especially masculine domination to nature, it's create this crisis. And climate change is normal, but human induced. And yesterday IPCC's report is a witnessing, or is a example, or is evidence that it's totally human induced crisis. First one. So second one, this time and all over the global young people, they are demanding system change, because we have a problem with the current system. So I think COVID-19 creates a new opportunity to reshaping or rebuilding our model, and it's also the green recovery with Green New Deal, I think. So, and Bangladesh is a first countries from the developing, one of the countries who are fighting for Green New Deal. And young people, especially European young people, they are very active on the Green New Deal. But first time, our Parliamentary Standing Committee for Forest, Environment and Climate Change, and the chair, Mr. Sabir Hossain Chowdhury, he take a decision in their standing committee meeting about Green New Deal and develop the master plan or roadmap for energy plan also. And from the beginning, in 2019, with the Fridays for Future movement, and we young people were asked our Prime Minister to declare climate emergency. And to addressing these youth demands, Bangladesh Parliament first ever taken a motion. It's called not only climate emergency, it's also planetary emergency. Also focusing on the biodiversity, focusing on the nature, focusing on the ecosystem, and for the justice for planet also. So after that, Bangladesh government is taking a plan with it like 20 new coal-fired power plant, first one. Then we raised our voice amid COVID-19 and digital mobilization, all also the Matarbari project, phase out 2, Matarbari project 2. And many countries, they are by legally or binded in the agreement is Paris Agreement, like I can mention Japan or Germany or also India, I think. They are investing in Bangladesh. But many countries, they are developed countries like Japan, Germany, or they are going with renewable energy, but they are dumping coal in Bangladesh. And coal was also cheap. But after this movement, we also tagging the Japan's prime minister and urging them and also communicate with the Japanese young friends. And then, and also the many countries who are also involved with the negotiation like Netherlands and UK. Then the coal prices get higher, and also our prime minister selected the chairperson or president of the climate vulnerable forum of the 48 vulnerable countries and V20 vulnerable 20s countries. And the CVA and V20's motion is the decarbonizing economy and no investment on coal and more focus on the renewable energy. So then we create pressure also Bangladesh. So we are creating everyone's pressure, like we are creating pressure for US for real genuine leadership. We are also urging COP26 presidency for real leadership, and also criticizing ourselves, Prime Minister, for real leadership on the CVF. And he nominated her daughter Saimozet as a climate ambassador. So then government, they take decision officially this year, the phase out the near 10 maybe coal power plant will be phased out, and they also declared a great document or plan marking Mujib birth centenary. It's called Climate Prosperity Plan, Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan, and also decade, Mujib Climate Prosperity Decade. So I was asked to Sabir Hussain, so what is your motion or position about the Green New Deal? And you have declared, your parliament declared the planetary emergency. What is the means of planetary emergency? Is planetary emergency supporting coal? So then he agreed to take a plan. It's a roadmap or vision with engaging young people and all civil and academician actors to finalize the roadmap, including Green New Deals and climate justice also in this pattern. So this Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan declared by government, they're focusing on decarbonizing economy. So they will go with the development or development events, but they will decarbonize. So but SREDA also proved that we have a huge potential on the solar, and Bangladesh is an example of the solar house systems also. So we are in the many aspects. Bangladesh is the role model for adaptation, for disaster management, for solar house system, and also leader for the global climate action leadership. Our prime minister champions for the earth. So we have many positive things, and parliament declared planetary emergency, but it's not enough. Our government is not doing enough. They're doing good, but we need more action to tackle this crisis. And yesterday IPCC report mentioning that the coastal countries will be destroyed, and our people facing sufferings, and ecosystem is dying, and many communities in our coastal area is still marooned after Cyclone Amphan and the Cyclone Yaas. So we are not positioned to adapt. We should migrate. We should displace, and it's currently internally, but after some years it will be external, and it will be global security issue for over the planet. So climate crisis for everywhere and every people. So it's time to take a Green New Deal. What is the Green New Deal for Bangladesh? It's the exclude natural liquid gas, LNG, coal, liquid natural gas, oil, everything is fossil. So alternative of coal, instead of coal will be LNG, is not correct thing. So Bangladesh should go with the renewable energy and the polluters and developed countries, they should investment on the renewable energy and with technology. So how Bangladesh can flourish the renewable energy in Bangladesh? So it's good for our plan. Bangladesh also committed in the Paris Agreement. So other countries should reduce emission. Bangladesh also by NDC. Bangladesh has NDC's commitment or contribution. So I think Bangladesh should also cutting emission. Thank you.
Thanks, Anur. And that's a very important point you raised in the end. Of course, all the points were important, but one very important point is this whole transition. Not only for Bangladesh, this whole transition, where will the transition for Asia go? Will it be from coal to another fossil fuel like natural gas, or will it be coal to renewable energy? We have seen in like for ADB's new plan, they're not going to invest in coal anymore. People are celebrating, of course, that's a celebration, but the problem there is that they're going to switch from coal to natural gas. Asia is likely becoming the new market for another fossil fuel. We'll come to that. We'll come to the solutions part in a bit. But before we move there, I want to, of course, go to Sagarika and have this question for you. Nepal is especially impacted by climate change, and the glaciers in Nepal are melting at an alarming rate. In yesterday's IPCC report, it clearly said that climate change is depleting snow cover in the Himalayas. Now, if you look at Nepal, and if you look at Nepal has a double crisis now, climate impacts, of course, COVID. If you look at Nepal, what is your vision as a climate change advocate, your vision for a green recovery post-COVID?
First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me here and with such a wonderful people. I think, yes, we are in Himalayan region. Most of the part of the Himalayan region are facing impact due to climate change. If you see from Afghanistan to Myanmar, different research and report has said that already 2 degrees Fahrenheit has rise above since 20th century. Melting of glaciers has profoundly impacted the downstreams as well as the upper streams. About 240 million people will live in the areas upper stream, and also downstream have been facing very much complication due to climate change already in this time. But COVID has also impacted in our region very, it has impacted very badly because there is lack of recovery going on, and there is lack of government's action towards recovery of COVID as well, COVID crisis as well. So if we see that, it's also true that the major rivers like Indus, Gangas, and Brahmaputra, which actually runs from those Himalayas to all the regions from Nepal to other regions in South Asia. The water resources is mainly dependent, people of the downstream are mainly dependent on those water resources, and those are billions of people living downstreams. And also in the context of Nepal, if you see, the mountain community are already in vulnerable state due to climate change. And also we know that limiting 1.5 degree, which is hard itself, is not going, which is hard itself to limit to 1.5 degree with what actions have been going on currently. But even if it is limited, it is said that 3 degree rise would, these mountain regions would already face 3 degree rise in the mid of the century. So I think we are already so much vulnerable, and if we see currently COVID has made more impact. So about the green recovery post-COVID crisis, and also keeping climate change as center of at the center of the recovery, strategy and actions. I believe that Nepal needs to first focus on adaptation strategies more, because which are accurate and which are more achievable, not only in the documents, but which are more achievable to those vulnerable communities, mostly the people who are living in vulnerable areas, who are marginalized, who are underprivileged. They do not have enough sufficient even ideas or even technology or even anything to cope with any of the impact that they have faced due to climate uncertain events due to climate change. And I believe that most important is the adaptation at context of Nepal, and then it's building a resilient future, keeping adaptation at the center and building a resilient future, which must be very clear and achievable in terms of vulnerability that Nepal faces. Secondly, I think Nepal needs to also think about economy from clean energy perspective, because as we talk about adaptation and building resilient future, we also need to think about how we mitigate and particularly focus on the focus on the mobility, transition of energy in the area of mobility in Nepal, which is very important. And if we do not envision right now, if Nepal do not envision those things right now, I think it will be very late, and it will be same as other countries have been. We have been blaming other countries, but it will be same that we will be repeating by ourselves. So I think Nepal also needs to focus on the energy transition in the case of mobility, because of our difficult geography itself. I think energy transition would be one of the very good way for Nepal to go towards a more sustainable development in transportation sector too. I think also it is also important that Nepal, being very vulnerable, we need to first be prepared to all the consequences that we are going to face at first hand, except other things as well. And Nepal has some pride projects going on in the plan, and which has not kept environment at the center of the planning. And I think Nepal, in this period, Nepal needs to restructure, reorganize those plans, and see how those development projects are going to impact environment, which already has impacted due to climate change, and those projects are going to ultimately impact more to our community environment and our biodiversity. And I think there is no point of compromise over it at today's context. And I think top of all, Nepal needs to now create more job opportunity, which are more green concept. Like there are so many people doing, so many young people doing so many entrepreneurship works, which gives ultimately green jobs and economy to the country. And Nepal also needs to bring more ease and support to those citizens who have been giving effort for the recovery of COVID, as well as helping to meet our vision and mission of NDC as well. And top of all, I think there needs to be a proper framework from government itself, how they achieve those things, and which is lacking. And I also think that we lack the politician or politics which would talk about green recovery or also Green New Deal or anything. We don't have any politicians or politics going on that actually takes this vision forward, and who also understand it very well. I think that is very lacking, and Nepal needs to work on those, I think, to recover well post-COVID, also to support those vulnerable people who have already faced impact due to climate change, and COVID has impacted more. I think this all needs to be kept at the center post-recovery.
Thank you, Sagarika. That was a good explainer to the challenges that Nepal is facing, not only from climate impacts but also from COVID, and the way forward for Nepal in a post-COVID economy. And one thing that I'm going to ask you, like as a connecting question, is that, and this is also a question for Sohanur and Janatul up next, is that we are seeing that in Asia, rich countries are cutting down on fossil fuels at home. They are transitioning to renewable energy, or they are laying down a framework. But at the same time, they're investing in fossil fuels abroad. Um, and or they are propagating solutions like gas as a transition fuel. We are seeing and I'll go direct here and take the example of Japan. We are seeing Japan's continued investment in coal in Bangladesh and Indonesia, while Japan is cutting down on coal in Japan itself. And of course, China's backing of oil drilling projects in Nepal, which is if it goes ahead, we know that the drilling work has already begun in Dalit in Nepal, but this will be catastrophic for a Himalayan country. I know what you thought. You worked on this campaign, but for our listeners, I want you to tell us what are your thoughts on these things, especially on the oil drilling project that China is backing in Nepal.
Okay, I think that it's total injustice for people living in Nepal, because most of them think that it's going to benefit, most of the population of Nepal thinks that it is going to benefit Nepal in multiple ways, because we are going to be independent and fossil fuel is bringing so much of prosperity and wealth, economically benefits our country. They think so, but very least of us know that it's ultimately going to impact our country more than ever we have imagined. And because we are already vulnerable due to climate change, and we are at the fault line between Indian and Tibetan plate. So we are already facing so much of seismic events. We had in 2015, we had massive earthquake. We had a huge loss. Still, some of the communities are recovering from those laws, still they have not been able to recover. So if Dal Lake is and there has already been exploration, and they're already starting drilling in Dal Lake, which is hilly region. And if you see the map of the Dal Lake and its seismic activity, it's highly vulnerable itself before. So now when they start the drilling process, we know that how drilling impacts. It's not only about earthquake, but the drilling, the location where drilling is happening is very near to the community. And we know that it impacts highly to about 50 to 80 kilometers of the area. It impacts the water resources, it impacts soil, it impacts the biodiversity of the area, and ultimately creating so much of diseases to the community and people around. So I think if you ask me my view, it's total injustice that these developed countries are doing. I feel like they are just, they are one of the, they are the reason that we are facing all the crisis. And now they are trying to, I feel like they are trying to put it on those countries who are most vulnerable and least responsible for the problems. I feel like they want to put it all on those, and we are the global South countries are yet we can we are allowed to emit some of the emissions that according to the whatever the rules they have made, because we are emitting very less. So maybe that is the reason that they want to invest more on the countries like us. And also other strategies they might have for future, which might not be good for us, creating more debt to the countries like us. So I think it's very injustice. Already we have been facing a lot of impact that would ultimately bring our economy down in long term, and communities, people, our biodiversity would be a huge loss to the country. I think our country needs to have a second thought, and I think these rich countries also need to start investment in more clean energy. I think there needs to be, they need to think more about people and people, their life, and what the impact they are going to face and the profit they are trying to make out of it. we need to think about it more.
Thanks, Sagarika, and especially emphasizing on the part that investing in fossil fuel projects abroad in poorer countries or developing countries, while rich countries like China are cutting down on fossil fuels at home, is definitely not not a development, not development. It's actually injustice. So, Hanur, I know you have been very vocal about Japan's involvement in coal projects in Bangladesh, especially in the Matarbari phase one and phase two. Over to you. What's your take?
Yes, thank you, Shivan, for giving chance for again. So to running this campaign, we are facing some problems or some hurdles in Bangladesh. Like that, Bangladesh is a innocent victim, or our contribution only 0.03, but Bangladesh is the highest vulnerable. And first one. Second one is that Shagurika mentioned the global south, but in Fridays for Future, we established a narrative. It's called MAPA, most affected peoples and areas. So, like Bangladesh, in Asia, we have many MAPA countries, like Maldives or also Nepal also. And Asia also the one of the most polluters. Like in the global contribution, it's near 53% or half of the pollution from Asia, most of the from Southeast Asia. And in the first list, who are the most polluters, like China and India, they are our neighboring country. So we have also responsibility. So not only blaming the polluters like the European countries, but all of the European countries not responsible. So our some neighbor countries or Asian countries also responsible for this first one. So with Green New Deal and Green Recovery, we can curb this crisis also. And in Bangladesh, when our contribution is very low for the emission, so our elders or our some experts, they think that we can emit more. We can emit more, and they are referring the Paris Agreement that the emission must needed for the development. But sustainable development goal or our current situation to keeping 1.5 degree, so no more emission to keeping 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius. It's the mandatory, and every country should cutting emission. But Bangladesh can emit, but I am telling, we are telling to European countries or US that you cannot emit. So it's not ethical or logical, I think. So Bangladesh should cutting emission, but our contribution is very less. So we have chance to cutting less numbers, but they have to create balance to absorb and the emission. So it's the first one that we are not emitters, so we can. So it is a mindset of some experts or some people that we have not to cutting emission. But under the Paris Agreement and NDC, we must cutting emission first one. And in the South Asia, not only Bangladesh, also India or many countries, our voice or our democratic participation, it's under threat, like many laws. And the Digital Security Act in Bangladesh, and Indian one activist Disha Ravi was sent to jail for share a toolkit. So it's our democratic rights. So when we are talking against the Matarbari and with huge impact on environmental and social issues, but we are feeling under threat, and sometimes we're feeling life threat. And the oils company or coals company, they're very powerful. And also the clean gas is totally lie. It's totally it's fossil, so it's not clean or green, so it's a fake, I think. And also when we are talking against Rampal power plant, so government taking it's a totally improved with improved technology, so it's not harming the Sundarban. But current times and several times the ship with coal, sinks in the Sundarbans, and also oil tanker in Shivsha River was sink in the Sundarban. So we are not Sundarban or Amazon. It's the planet asset or world's asset. It's not for only Bangladesh, but we cannot protecting this Sundarban. But Sundarbans is protecting our coastal people from several disaster. So we are mobilizing young people, youth networks, youth organization through digital organizing tools, and we capacity development them. And currently, Bangladeshi media also covers, and recently Prothom Alo covers the Green New Deal for protecting our planets. So our people, they are getting more informed, and they are engaging with this. And also we are taking many measures, not only under the Green New Deal, but in the movement. We also sending the postcard to Prime Minister all over the countries. Young people write to a Prime Minister for the 100% renewable. And we also taking a Japanese cartoon. It's called Pikachu. So to in the EV of the G20 meeting, and Japan also the part of the G20. But they are taking targets, but it's a long delay. But we need urgent action. So our government or South Asian leaders or global leaders, they are not taking climate change as an urgent issue, and they are giving some commitment place, but it's not concrete, and it's a totally it's not concrete. So as a global leader, they are delivering some speech, but totally empty. But needed concrete and specific action. And they are very worried about internal economy, but they are not worried about planetary existence or our own existence. So when we think about the what the profit, or when we are thinking about the global existence, then we can tackle these issues. So I am very hopeful, like a planetary emergency. I hope Bangladesh will take this Green New Deal on energy sector, I think, and young people have the power to account our government. Thank you.
Thank you for yeah, explaining what young people in Bangladesh are working on and their expectations from the government and the global community, and using creative tactics like a Pikachu costume to remind Japan of its commitment with the Paris Climate Agreement, and that it has to stop investing in coal in Bangladesh. Um, I'm going to ask you the next question, Taylor. I was reading about the Singapore Green Plan 2030 yesterday, very briefly. And then, since we are talking, I wanted to ask you, do you think this Green Plan 2030 is ambitious enough? And is this the Green New Deal for Singapore that you have been advocating for?
That's an easy question. No. So it's not a Green New Deal. It's a bit of marketing. And in fact, when it was announced, there was no actual policy change. So it was maybe a bit of misleading to some people, thinking there was something new. In fact, all they did was they just remarketed their existing policies. SG Climate Rally was very fast to go and actually critique it line by line. And essentially, it's my response earlier is to the current government policies are the exact same criticisms to the Green Plan, because they just bundled their existing policies and then marketed it under the Green Plan. I mean, to their credit, there are some good things in there. Some things that I think Singapore is doing that other countries could replicate, particularly urban centers in Asia. And that's really in their transportation. So that is one area where Singapore really is, I would say, ahead of the curve. In the sense that, first of all, there's a massive, very first-class public transit system that's kind of the first preventative measure. And then on top of that, they are pledging to, by 2025, if I'm not mistaken, to completely, correct me if I'm wrong, 2025 or 2035, I believe it's 2025, to switch to all electric vehicle infrastructure, which is rather impressive in my opinion. So they're definitely, electric vehicles, so this is kind of part of that. That's certainly a Green New Deal policy, right? So because it's public infrastructure investment, right? Well, public incentive for kind of renewables infrastructure and electrification and battery technology. That's part of in renewable infrastructure. But other than that, there isn't much really of substance in there that departs from the status quo. So there isn't very much substance in the plan, and the things I mentioned earlier about carbon tax, about just transition assistance, financial assistance essentially for transition workers, public infrastructure plans, both mostly in the region, but also domestically as well. These are all pretty much absent.
Thanks, Taylor. And I think one good point that really came out of what you said is that everything that the governments of Asia or globally or regions say that this is a Green New Deal, it's not a Green New Deal or a Green Recovery Plan or a Green New Plan. It's like for the Green New Deal Bangladesh campaign, we say that we're very clear whatever the government publishes as a policy and says this is a Green New Deal, we won't celebrate, we'll actually analyze and see, is it exactly a Green New Deal or it's a marketing strategy? And that's what the danger in Asia, at least we are seeing, is that there's this whole transition been talked about, saying that we are going to a cleaner fuel like gas. And the irony of it that it's another dirty energy. And the emissions that reduces from natural gas is not enough to stop or mitigate, catastrophic climate change. Before we end, my last question is for you, Janatul. You've seen, you have experienced climate impact as you're growing up in Bangladesh. Like most young people in Bangladesh, I know, they have grown up with climate impacts like super cyclones in their communities. But now Bangladesh is building coal plants like Matarbari and Rampal and Sundarbans. And they're also thinking of a Green New Deal, and young people are pushing for a Green New Deal. What do you think are, or many, or just one hurdle you could think about that Bangladesh is facing right now for enacting a Green New Deal? And what do you think it should do? What should be the roadmap?
Yeah, Shiva. Yeah, you're totally right. You know that I live in Satkhira. This is nearby Sundarban. And last week I am searching from Google what is the situation of Sundarban. If you look just now, that the Sundarban is totally injured. A lot of place you saw that the like desert in the not the side that people are living. So we are in a dangerous situation. Yeah, we know that Bangladesh is doing good, but in my opinion, yeah, we want to go not like all.
Janatul, you're breaking. Maybe you can switch off your video, then maybe the bandwidth will be a little better.
Yeah. Now you can hear me?
Yes. Perfect.
Yeah. So if I raise my voice of all those people, that my opinion is that Bangladesh is doing good thing, but this is not enough. That we are in coal now. We are turning gas. We told that we so we will. Sorry.
You broke up again. Can you repeat the last word or sentence you said?
I think network problem. So I will close my in 30 seconds, that we will reinstalling all of our forest. I think this is also Green Deal with our people and our countries, and also we want to go renewable energy right now, because if we don't do now, our life will be so much dangerous. Because I am living in Costa Rica, I know the realities. I saw in Cyclone Aila how much people life is dangerous, how much child are dying in under saline water. And now this year I saw Cyclone Yash and the saline water or river flowing, or how much destroy their people. So when you are affected, you can understand the process. But when you are living better life, you cannot understand how much you want the change. So we as a young people, we demand now. We want to change our life in new way. Because every day we face in problem. Like women are facing a lot of problems. You know that we are in water crisis, we are in saline problem. So the women health is so much problem. Like the reproductive organ is also damaged in this community. So I told that those people are telling they don't know the realities, how we are facing. So our policies we will change, and that you taking a time that we will do this and then do this. So I think that we had no enough time in our hand. So we will now go to green new deal in every sector. Not only that we will go to that industry level, not industry, we will reinstalling our planet. Yeah. And we also work to reinstalling the green energy, renewable energy in industry level. And also we will all the section, all the side, that how can we emit carbon, and how can how can we save our earth, because we are in the situation, because we are the direct victim, we know the realities.
Thank you, Jannatul. Thank you so much. I just want to mention that we live in a digital divided region where internet bandwidth is not the same for every place. And Jannatul is calling from a coastal area which is under flooded right now. So there are some voice breaks. But what Jannatul mentioned is a very important point, that there should be a Green New Deal in every sector, every sector of Bangladesh. And for a very climate impacted part in region like Sundarbans, there should be massive tree plantation, because that's also a Green New Deal to recover